Welcome back. Last time, Adrian Blackwell paid $2 million for 6 months with Ava. A price so shocking that everyone in the room understood it wasn't about companionship. It was about possession, about control, about something darker. And as she stood in that penthouse, watching him smile, Ava realized she had no idea what she'd just agreed to. This is episode 2, and this is where everything spirals. The next morning, Ava woke up alone in a penthouse bedroom the size of her entire apartment. The bed was soft, expensive, cloud-like, the kind of bed that costs more than her yearly salary. But it felt like a cage. She was wearing a silk nightgown she didn't remember putting on. Someone had dressed her. Someone had put her to bed like a doll. The realization made her stomach turn. She found him in the kitchen. He was reading the financial news on a tablet, completely at ease, completely in control. He looked up when she entered, and his expression shifted slightly.
You signed.
Not a smile.
It's a cage.
Just a recognition. Like he'd been waiting for her to realize something. You slept well,
Why are you doing
he said.
this?
It wasn't a question.
Don't make a scene.
I
Let
don't
go of
remember
me.
getting to bed, Ava said carefully. She was still in the nightgown, aware that she was vulnerable, exposed. You were exhausted. I had my staff prepare you for sleep. I hope you don't object. Object. As if she had a choice. As if anything she said mattered in his world. Now what happens now? She asked. He set the tablet down. When he looked at her, his expression was unreadable. Not kind, not cruel. Just clinical. Now we begin. Those 3 words made her blood run cold. He explained it methodically over breakfast in a dining room that overlooked the entire city. She wasn't allowed to leave the penthouse without him. Her phone was being monitored. Not that she'd said yes to that. But he explained it as if she had. She was to wear clothes he chose for her. She was to eat what was prepared for her. She was to be available to him at all times. You're describing a prison, Ava said quietly. I'm describing a contract you signed, Adrian replied. He slid a document across the marble table. It was the contract from the auction. She skimmed it. The language was buried in legal jargon, but the meaning was clear. She had agreed to 6 months of exclusive companionship, which apparently included surrendering her personal freedoms. This is insane, she said. This is exactly what you agreed to, he said. You wanted to save your father's life. This is the price. She wanted to argue. She wanted to walk out. But her father was still in danger. The people who'd lent him money would still come for him if she ran. She was trapped, and Adrian knew it. His entire strategy had been designed to box her in with no escape route. Why? She asked. Why would you pay $2 million to control someone? Well, you could have just hired someone, paid them a salary, been done with it. He stood and walked to the window. When he spoke, his voice was different. Colder, more dangerous. Because I don't want someone compliant. I want you to understand that you belong to me now. That every breath you take in this penthouse is a privilege I'm allowing. Every meal, every night's sleep, every moment of your existence is on my terms. I want you to feel the weight of that. That's not companionship, Ava whispered. That's abuse. He turned to look at her. Perhaps. But it's what you signed up for. The first week was a masterclass in control. Adrian dictated everything. What she wore, when she ate, when she was allowed to sleep. He took her out once, to a charity gala where she was paraded around as his latest acquisition. She wasn't introduced as Ava. She was introduced as my guest or my companion. Never her name, never her identity. Just possession. But there were moments, small cracks in his armor. One night she found him in his office, drunk. Actually drunk, not controlled, not dominantly sipping whiskey while working, but sitting at his desk with half a bottle of expensive scotch, staring at a photograph. The photo showed him, years younger, with a woman who looked like her. Not identical, but similar enough that Ava's breath caught. "Who is she?" Ava asked. Adrian's head jerked up. For a moment, his guard was completely down. She saw something in his expression: grief, rage, obsession. "That is not your concern," he said, but his voice had changed, shaken. "She looks like me," Ava said carefully. "She doesn't," he snapped. But he was staring at the photo like it was the most important thing in the world. "Why do you have a photo of her in your office?" He didn't answer. Instead, he turned away and poured another drink. "Leave," he said quietly. She left, but she understood something in that moment. Adrian's obsession with her wasn't about her. It was about someone else, someone who looked like her, someone who, and Ava could sense this with absolute certainty, was no longer in his life. The next day, she searched his office when he was gone. It took an hour of careful searching, but she found a file hidden behind other documents. Inside was everything: photographs, newspaper clippings, court documents. Her name was Elena, Adrian's wife, and they'd been married 5 years before she left him. The newspaper articles were vague, but the story was clear enough. She'd filed for divorce and disappeared. Just gone. He'd tried to find her for 2 years, apparently, spending millions on private investigators. But the photographs told a different story. Photos of Elena with bruises on her arms. Photos of Adrian's hand clamped around her wrist. Photos that suggested the marriage hadn't been companionship either. It had been control, obsession, possibly abuse. Ava realized in that moment what Adrian had done. He'd taken one look at her and seen Elena. He'd decided, consciously or unconsciously, that he could have a second chance, that he could buy back what he'd lost, that he could recreate his marriage with someone who looked similar enough to fill the void. And she was the replacement. That night, when Adrian came to her, expecting compliance, she confronted him. "You don't want me," she said. "You want her, like you want Elena back." His entire body went still. The expression on his face was something between fury and anguish. "You don't know anything about this," he said quietly. "I found the file," Ava said. "I saw the photos. I saw what happened." "What you saw was taken out of context," Adrian said coldly. "Elena was..." He stopped. She was delicate. She needed protection. She needed guidance. She needed an escape route, Ava said. "That's why she left you." He moved toward her, and for a moment, she thought he might hit her. Instead, he stopped inches away, his entire body trembling with barely contained rage. "You signed a contract," he said. "For the next 6 months, you don't get to judge me. You don't get to question me. You get to exist exactly as I allow you to exist. Do you understand?" She understood. But more than that, she understood that Adrian was broken, and he was trying to fix himself by breaking her. The next 3 weeks were the hardest of her life, and Adrian became more controlling, more demanding, more possessive. He wanted her with him constantly. He wanted to know what she was thinking, what she was feeling, what she was wanting. It was suffocating. It was terrifying. It was also, and this was the most complicated part, beginning to feel like something else. Because there were still moments where Adrian's carefully constructed walls cracked and she saw something human underneath. Moments where he'd catch her watching him, and something soft would cross his expression before he'd harden again. Moments where he'd touch her hand and hold it just a second too long, like he was afraid she'd disappear. One night, he brought her to his penthouse's rooftop. The city spread out below them, millions of lights, millions of lives, none of them knowing what was happening 40 stories up. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly. For the control, for the obsession. Ava didn't know how to respond. An apology from Adrian seemed impossible. "I can't stop," he continued. "I tried with Elena. I tried to be different, to give her space. But it was never enough. I always needed more. I always needed to know where she was, what she was thinking, who she was seeing, and eventually she couldn't take it anymore. So you bought me instead," Ava said quietly. "Someone who can't leave." "Yes," he admitted. "Someone who can't leave. Someone who has to stay. Someone I can keep." "That's not love, Adrian." "I know," he said. And for the first time, she heard genuine anguish in his voice. "I know I'm not capable of love. I'm only capable of possession, of obsession, of needing to control everything around me so I don't lose it." Ava realized in that moment that Adrian was as trapped as she was. Trapped in his own psyche, his own patterns, his own inability to connect with another human being without trying to own them. "What do you want from me?" she asked. He looked at her for a long moment. "I want you to stay, even after the contract ends, not because you have to, but because you choose to. And if I don't choose to, then I'll make you stay anyway," he said simply. "Because I can't lose you. I can't lose anyone else." It was the most honest thing he'd said to her. And it terrified her because she was beginning to understand that she was falling for him. Not the controlling, possessive version of him, but the broken, desperate version underneath. The version that was human and flawed and terrifyingly aware of his own darkness. The episode ended there, with Ava standing on a rooftop 40 stories above the city, realizing that she was no longer sure what was worse, the man who'd bought her, or the fact that she was beginning to want to stay. And in episode 3, everything gets more complicated. Because Adrian's past isn't finished with him, and Elena isn't as gone as he thought she was. And this is your host. Thanks for spending another episode with Ava and Adrian's story. Subscribe to see what happens when the woman Adrian tried to replace comes back into his life. I'll see you next week.